right, friends, let's get to cooking, and then my favorite thing, eating. We are going to be making a pasta today. It's going to have a tomato base with some lentils just to bring in some protein and some fiber. And we're going to be cooking it with some zucchini and pepper today, but you can really cook it with whatever veg you want to add with your pasta, and you can also use any pasta you want. This recipe is super easy to make your own, and I hope you guys enjoy. So get out your veg, give them a wash, and get out the rest of your ingredients, and I will meet you back here. All right, so to begin our prep, we're gonna grab our onion, give it a bit of a roll so we can peel it. I'm going to just cut off the end piece here just to help us peel it a little bit more. So for this recipe, you can again use any kind of onion you want. It really just depends on your preference or what you have around, as well as we can use any veg. So I'm using zucchini and pepper today, but realistically, you can mix it up. I usually love mushrooms in a pasta. Spinach is really good. You can also choose to add different herbs with it. So basil is usually really nice to add with pastas as well. And we'll just get this peeled. All right, so for our onion, we're gonna wanna dice it. So I, again, always like to get myself a flat edge, and then I'm gonna cut down and do it close to the root, but not all the way. And then just turn it on its flat side, and you can slice through. If your onion's really strong, don't be afraid to take a break. And then you can always quickly go back in. So once we do the main bit of chopping, we're just gonna wanna grab all of the big chunks that maybe didn't quite get cut all the way through. And you're just gonna wanna cut them so they're about the same size as the rest of it. And just go through and make sure they are all cut. So for pastas, I usually like to have smaller pieces of onion anyways. All right. So I'm just going to put this off to the side in my bowl, and then we can continue our prep. So once we get our onion to the side and we have some more room on our cutting board, we're going to prep the rest of our veg. So I'm using 1 pepper today. And again, you can cut it however you want. Just be mindful of what you're doing, and then we'll just remove all of the seeds. So I'm just going to be dicing this one. So I'm gonna first slice it. And when it comes to pasta, again, I usually like smaller pieces. So I'm gonna be dicing my peppers into a little bit smaller than bite size. You just wanna make sure that they are all around the same size, just like that. So just go through now and cut your peppers. So once we're finished our peppers, we can move on to our next veg, which I'm going to be using a zucchini today. Cut off the end pieces. And then I'm going to cut mine in half. And then dice it. If you want smaller slices, you can even cut it in half one more time, which I think I will do today. And then we just have small pieces that are very similar size to our peppers. So just go ahead and finish cutting up your zucchini. So once we have our zucchini done, we can finish up our prep with a little bit of garlic. So I have 2 cloves, and we're just gonna want to squish them, cut off the end, and peel them. Oop. So for my garlic, I'm going to mince them into small pieces. So I'm gonna turn it up on its side and very carefully slice it. And then we can just turn it on its flat side and slice it one more time. So once I have the general of them all cut, I'm just going to grab my big knife one more time and just go through it. Just to make a little smaller pieces and make sure everything is chopped. All right, so that's pretty much it for our prep. We are going to go ahead and get started cooking our sauce. So for this recipe, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna cook down half of our onion and all of our veg, half of our garlic, into a medium to large pot. So we're gonna heat up the pot, put some oil in there, put about a tablespoon of oil, and then we're just gonna let that heat up before we add anything in there. I'm going to add in about half of our onions very carefully to the pot. And just give them a bit of a stir in with the oil. And we're going to add in a little bit of salt. Oops. And again, we're just gonna mix those in, mix that all in. We're just gonna let that cook for about a minute to 2 minutes, and then we're gonna add in our garlic and the rest of our veg. So while that's cooking, we can just get out a small bowl and we will prepare our spices. We're gonna want half a tablespoon of oregano, as well as we're going to be using just some salt and pepper. And pepper. We're also going to be using some sugar today. So I'm using brown sugar, and we're gonna want about a tablespoon. So just make sure while you're doing this, you're keeping an eye on your onions. Give them a stir if you need. And we're gonna go ahead and add in our garlic for about a minute, and then you're gonna want to add in the rest of the veg. So make sure when you're adding in your garlic to only add in half. And then give it a good stir. And if you need, you can turn the heat down a little bit just to make sure the garlic does not burn. So we're just gonna give that a quick minute. You should be able to begin to smell the garlic. So we want it to become very fragrant, but we don't want it to burn. So then we're just gonna go ahead and add in the rest of our veg. And give that a stir. So we're gonna let that cook down for 4 to 5 minutes. So in the meantime, we can continue getting the rest of our sauce mixture ready. So we're gonna want 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And I'm also going to add in just a pinch of chili flakes. Maybe 2, if you're feeling like you want it a little bit more spicy. And we're gonna wanna grab out another bowl or something, some sort of container that we can put our veg in the meantime. So we'll just leave this here and continue cooking our veg until they are fully cooked through and fried. The zucchini is going to let off a little bit of liquid, so it might take a little bit longer to cook through. And if you want it to be more stir fried and with a little bit of crispiness, then you're gonna have to let the liquid cook through and then let the veg really cook and get a crisp on them. We're going to cook our pasta sauce separately today. So I'm choosing to add in the veg. I'm choosing to take out the veg and leave them for when we have our pasta all together. For the sauce, we're just gonna be using the other half of our onion and garlics, our tomatoes, and the lentils. So just go ahead and keep a watch on your veg, and once it's done, put it in a container on the side. So once we have all of our veg in our pan, we're gonna begin with our sauce. So we're just gonna go back to our pot there, and you can either use a little bit of oil or you can use a little bit of water or stock, and we're gonna cook down our onions and the garlic, and then we will come back and we will get our tomatoes ready and everything else. So go ahead and heat up your pot on medium heat, and then we'll add in our onions. So we're gonna wanna let our onions cook down for 4 to 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and add our garlic at the end and cook it for an additional 1 to 2 minutes. So this week, since we're focusing on patience, I wanna talk about, you know, when your life feels a little bit like a mess and you know, you don't really know what you're doing, that is okay. It's okay to not always have everything figured out, and it's okay to maybe not know your path. But it's really important that we don't let this kill our drive and our desire to change. So we just have to be patient and work one step at a time. We don't have to always be so focused on the bigger picture or everything else that's going on. Just focus on your one step at a time. Continue to put, you know, persistent work behind what you want, persistent action, and then you can also just have patience in the journey. So keep an eye out on your onions, give them a stir. After about 5 minutes, we're gonna add in our garlic and cook it for another minute or 2. While we're letting our onions cook down, we can move on and just prepare our tin of tomatoes. So you're just gonna wanna get them open with a can opener if you're using tinned. You can also choose to use fresh tomatoes. If you're using fresh tomatoes, just dice them up and have them ready. So we're gonna wanna use about 2 tins of tomatoes. So just get both of those ready. So for our tin tomatoes, it doesn't really matter what kind of tomatoes we're using. You can get ones that have certain seasonings on them. This one happens to be an Italian seasoning because I figured it would be good today. You can also get ones that have garlic or chili infused, or you can just use your favorite pasta sauce. It doesn't have to be tomatoes. You can get any sort of pasta sauce will work. So once we add our onions in, we're gonna let them cook for 5 to 7 minutes. We want them to begin to get nice and clear, nice and translucent. Because this is going in our sauce, we want them nice and cooked down. So once it gets to be about 7 minutes or so, we are going to add in our garlic, and you only need to add the garlic in for 1 to 2 minutes. We don't want to burn it, we just want it to get nice and fragrant smelling. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye on your heat and not burning them. Now that I've added the garlic, we're just going to get our tomatoes ready because we're gonna wanna add them right in. As well as we're gonna want a cup of red lentils. And we will go ahead and add those into the pot as well. So we'll start off with our tomatoes. Lentils, as well as we want to add in between half a cup and a cup of water. And then you're just going to want to give them a stir and make sure that the lentils are covered. So if you have to add more water, go ahead and add a little bit more water, but we don't want it too soupy. We want to make sure that the lentils are covered. Then we're going to grab our spices and sugar that we had put in a bowl, and we'll just add that in as well. We're going to turn the heat up to just over medium to get it up to a nice boil. And then once it's boiling, we're going to turn it down. We're going to cover it and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. The simmering will depend on on your lentils being cooked or not. So we want our lentils to be soft but not mushy, and we also don't want them to be too hard. So I would recommend around in between 17 and 20 minutes, just coming and checking on your lentils and maybe even taking out a small spoonful, cooling it off, and then giving it a quick try. When we cover our pot, make sure that you leave a little bit of a hole so that some of the steam can escape, and that way it doesn't bubble over on us. So once you get it up to a nice boil, just turn it down to medium low. You still want there to be some bubbles, and then that will just help the lentils cook through. Throughout this process, you can keep coming back and just checking on your lentils and seeing if you might need to add a little bit more water. You can always do that, but the lentils are going to suck up some of the liquid. So it's important to remember that. It's okay that they do, but as the sauce incorporates more, if you don't want it that thick, you can always add in a little bit more water, and you can always turn it up or turn it down. So we're going to just let that simmer for about 20 minutes, but around the 15-17 minute mark, just give them a check and see how they're doing. In the meantime, you can get a medium pot. You're gonna wanna fill it with water and some salt, get it up to a boil, and then just cook your pasta depending on what it says on the box. So I'm using a rigatoni pasta, and mine is 12 to 13 minutes. So I'm gonna get my pot of water up to a boil, and then I'm gonna add in my pasta and cook it for the amount of time it says on the box. For the last couple of minutes, we're just going to add in our veg here. You can give it a stir, and then you can just turn the heat off. It should be pretty hot from cooking all of that time, and it's really just to warm the veg up again. All right guys, once you have your pasta and your sauce all finished, you just have to incorporate it all together. And you can finish it off with a little, say, Parmesan cheese, some chili flakes. I have a vegan Parmesan here and it's super good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe, and I will see you for the next one. Yo, check out how cool this onion is. Oh.